Well, Bob, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I am good. How are you, my love?
I'm good. This is going to be fun.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
interviewing my husband after 187 episodes. We finally get Bob Allen.
Well, I will try and tell the truth, and you can stop me if I start lying.
Well, if you sound good, I'll just let it roll.
Okay.
How about that?
That sounds cool. Okay.
Awesome.
What do you need to know about me that you don't already know?
Well, listen, I feel like I know most of the things, but what's that movie, American Beauty? There's a lot about me you don't know,
I
smarty
know,
pants.
Mr. Smarty Pants. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We might find something new. Who knows?
Right.
So you don't know this because you don't listen to the podcast, but we do something
Mm-mm.
called we do we do something called the lightning round, and I'm doing air
Okay.
quotes on a podcast because
Okay.
this usually takes a long time. There's nothing lightning about it. Ready?
Yes, I am ready. Go
Okay.
for it.
So, do you have a favorite recovery book, or as the cool kids call it, quit lit, as in quit literature?
So the 12 by 12. If you want to drill down specifically, step 6 and 7, that's where I think people really grow.
Why
We can talk
six
about
and
that later.
okay, we can talk about it later. Step 6 and 7.
But yeah, yeah, yeah.
Listen, you and I were on a step 7 kick for a long time.
Yes. Changed our lives, I think.
Changed our lives. And I don't even know why. Maybe it was just because we were ready for it, but
Hmm.
I actually listened. And when we talk about the 12 and 12, it's the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book. And there actually is a website where, oh gosh, I forget what I think it's aa.org, but you can listen to the 12 and 12 audio for free. I'll leave a link in the show notes. Okay, step
Yeah,
six
those
and
two
seven.
those two steps are they separate, in my opinion. Yeah, it's really about growth right there,
Mm.
right? I mean, some people say, and I agree with this too. If I'm sure you've talked to people on your show, or I know you have in the rooms, is about doing step 10, 30 days. Read
Mm-hmm.
it for 30 days, and that will change your life. I agree with that. That's a really good read. But for some reason, step 6 and 7, that's a more in-depth. For me, it had more weight to it
Mm-hmm.
about how to live life, successfully and be happy and humble and grateful. And, I don't know. It just it rang true for me. Those were the two steps that they're my favorite. And they get
Yeah.
brushed aside very easily for those that are a big, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, or the AA book. 6 and 7 is there's just a short couple paragraphs, and then you're done. Then you're on 8. So
Yeah.
if those that are listening haven't read the 12 by 12 step 6 and 7, I highly encourage it. Or if you're just even interested in character defects, shortcomings, that type of thing, I highly recommend reading that.
I would agree. For me, step 7
Absolutely.
was life changing. I don't know why. It's just it struck me so
Yeah.
deep after a while, but it was like, oh gosh, I've been chasing. It's easy to get caught in the rat race and acquiring and achieving and all that stuff, and I was feeling like I had to do everything, like getting back to that
Yeah.
self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's definitely
Absolutely.
a character defect.
Right.
So
Right.
I love that you said that it's about growth, even long-term growth too. And you
Yeah.
just turned
Absolutely.
I should point out that you just
Yes.
celebrated 30
Yes, you should.
33 years of recovery.
I know.
Oh my
33 years is
god.
a long time.
That is a long
Yeah, it's
damn
kind of,
time.
you know, this month we've had our challenges, right?
Oh, yeah.
Heartbreak. So it was
Mm.
subdued. It
It
was
was
a
a little
little,
bittersweet.
yeah, I'm very, very grateful, for those that don't know, Arlena's mother, my mother-in-law, passed away on the 3rd. And what's really incredible for me now, my sobriety birthday is November 24th, and that happens to be Aida's belly button birthday. So there's a big part of me that day even is even more special to me now.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm going to leave that topic off the table right now.
I
I can feel myself getting emotional. So I'm just going to let it be there.
Yeah.
But, yeah. 33 years is a long time, right? I was an 18-year-old kid when I got sober, and there's a lot to tell there. So
yeah, we'll definitely get there. I
Thank
told
you.
you this is very slow. We only got to the first one of the 5 questions.
Right.
Okay. Do you have a favorite go-to mantra or quote that you live by?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
what?
I do. Yes, I do. Everything that happened, I have it written on my wall right now. Everything that happens to me is the best possible thing that can happen to me. So if you think about that, everything that is happening to me right now is absolutely the best thing that could happen to me. So, you know, for instance, we were just talking about your mom, right? And how she passed, and what that life and what her life and what she gave me, I really realized how much love I had for her, and how much love that I was able to feel through her, right? And, you know, it's just something beyond words for me. And that was a horrible thing, right? Cancer is a horrible thing. Losing somebody you dearly, truly love is hard. It's horrible. But the flip side of that, I loved her so much, right?
Oh, no, you did.
And I know that she loved me, you know. What you know, I always butcher it, but I was her favorite mijo. You know, I was her favorite son.
Mi hijo favorito.
Right. When I'd walk in, that's what she would say. So, yeah.
She wrote it in all your cards and stuff. That was so cute.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes, because you know it's always a positive. You know.
Right.
Life is how, you know, how are you going to look at life? Are you going to be bummed? Are you going to be depressed? Are you going to be sad? Are you going to be angry? Or are you going to look at it like, oh, okay, this is an opportunity for some growth, right? I can be happy. What's my choice? What's my decision, right? And if I come from a place where I'm present and in the moment, I tend to think more positive. My outlook is positive, right? So
yeah. I love that quote. Yeah. Everything that is happening to me is the best possible thing that could happen to me. Is that right?
Yep.
I love it. I love it.
Yep.
Do you have a regular self-care practice?
I do. And if I'm going to get honest, this last few weeks has been kind of tough, and it's been off. But
I think that's true for everybody during the holidays, don't you?
Yeah. For sure. Holidays, the life,
rough.
you know, the things that happen in life kind of throw me off.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to go, excuse me, I'm going to go a little bit further than that. You know, I've been, like we said, I've been sober for 33 years. And this isn't I've seen this a few times show up in my recovery, where it even talks about it in our literature, in the AA literature, that, you know, there comes a time when I almost refuse to pray, right? It talks about rebellion dogs at our every step, or something along those lines, about, you know, wanting to sit down, pray, and meditate. Is sometimes it is so difficult. What I've learned through my years and through, you know, the ups and downs of living life sober is that, one, I'm not perfect, and I'm not going to be this guy that prays and meditates every day. And I used to judge myself on that. And I don't do that anymore. You know, I was in this, life showed up. It's tough. I did my prayers as, you know, I was going throughout my day, but my morning ritual that I do normally is, you know, I wake up, I pray, I meditate, I read a few books, some scripture out of, you know, I can't say I'm Buddhist, but I'm definitely, I would be in the very beginning of it. I think that would be the most accurate, right? So, it really interests me. I love the reading. It sings to me. I've never read something where it brings tears to my eyes. And, you know, Thich Nhat Hanh is one of my favorites, of course, the Dalai Lama, right? And, you know, so I read something like that every day. Okay. Well, not every day, but as best I can, right? So, yeah, that's what I do.
Love it.
And it
Yeah.
sure
And
makes a big difference, right?
yeah. And I've seen, just like me, I've seen your morning routine, change and evolve over the years, and it's all good,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Because like as we change and evolve, what we need changes and evolve too. And I guess one could argue, we keep doing the things that,
yeah.
if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting,
Yes,
kind of a thing that works in the positive and the
absolutely,
negative. But it is kind of
absolutely.
nice to switch it up a little bit so it doesn't become rote and boring and routine and
Yeah,
then and a void of feeling, right?
yeah, 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 for
Yeah,
sure. And
that's good.
I'm a big sage burner. I know you know that.
You are. It's
So
so funny. You hotbox
yeah,
your office.
I
But
do.
my friend Tina, who's probably listening, she's going to listen to this. She's Native
Yeah.
American, and she's like, you have to crack the windows so the negative spirits can get out.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember you saying that, so I cracked the windows. I don't want
yeah.
no negative. No.
Yeah, right. Tina is.
Hell no.
No, right.
Yeah.
What about can we talk about meetings? Like, what's your
Yeah.
how has your program changed over 33 years?
It's huge, a lot. So, with the move that we did,
Right.
I only go, well, I shouldn't say I typically only go to men's meetings, right? I
Right.
do, when I would go to meetings with you, I thought that was important as a couple to go.
Yeah.
But if I had my choice, I just go to the men's meetings, and that's kind of where I was
Yeah.
raised. That's where I got the message of
Mhm.
Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps, and that's what works for me. So,
Mhm.
you know, I don't know about you. Now, I know your story, and, I know mine, but it's like before I got sober, I was a young man, and I only hung around. Well, I had my buddies that I party with, but it was, I felt like connected to girlfriends, right? And by the time I never opened up to my homies, right? Like I would never be like, "Hey man, pass me that weed. Hey, you know what, man? I'm feeling really less than today." That's not the type of conversations you would have. So, being raised with women, I tended to open up a little bit more to the girlfriends that I had.
Mhm.
And so when I got into the rooms, and you know, I needed to change my life. Like I had that moment, and we can talk about that spiritual experience that I had. That changed my entire life, and I knew I needed to do something completely different. So that required action and the fear I had to walk through, right? And one of the biggest fears was asking a man to help me, because my father left when I was 5 years old. I think that's how old you are in kindergarten, right? My parents got divorced, and
Yeah.
he left, and I didn't have a male figure, right? All I
Right.
had was females.
Right.
So it's a blessing on a lot of levels, on how I communicate with women, and specifically you.
Right.
Um,
Best communicator
but
ever. You're the one who taught me how to
I
communicate.
try. Yeah,
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
right.
I remember in the
Right.
beginning, I was a little hot tempered. I don't know if you remember that.
Little, good Lord.
I had a tendency to
I'm
break
not.
things.
Yeah,
Let's just say it, be honest.
yeah,
But you were the one who was like, no, we're gonna like you wouldn't let me leave. You'd be like, no, we're gonna keep talking about this until we feel
yes,
better. And I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
what? We're gonna what?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, yep,
but
yep.
that was really hard for me. But I remember those long silences and be
Yes,
like, I don't feel better. You'd be like, what are you thinking? Do you,
yes.
I don't feel good yet. Do you? And I'd be like, no. And he's like, keep talking.
That's right. That's right.
You remember
And
that?
you know
Yeah.
where I learned. So to circle back to what I was previously discussing is, it wasn't until I got into the rooms, and I went through the fear of asking a man to be my sponsor, right? And his name is Dan R, and he lives down in Southern California. That
I
man
interviewed
taught me.
him. I interviewed him. I have a podcast
I love
episode of
Dan.
him. I know he's
That
amazing.
man. Now I know we don't put people on pedestals or idolize or whatever, and I don't. He is. I love him to death. He changed my life. He showed me how to do this life, right? And the message that man carried to me, an 18-year-old kid, got through my pride, got through my, my judgments, whatever, you name it. He was just a guy that I could hear,
Yeah.
What's that one saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole thing there. But yeah, men's meetings is typically what I do in terms of recovery.
Yeah. It's different. Like, I encourage women to go to women's meetings for a few reasons. It's not,
exactly.
not all of the rooms are safe for women. So I think it's important.
No, we're not
women.
the
hotbed of mental
healthiest people on the hotbed of mental health.
Remember that time Travis went with us to a meeting and some lady was making googly eyes at Travis and he was all uncomfortable, and I was like, well, look, the odds are good, but the goods are odd.
That's right.
You can try that out, but be forewarned. Psycho.
That's funny.
Anyways, what's one thing you wish you knew? What's the one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
You know what? I don't know. I looking back, I'm grateful for my path that I've had. I guess the control freak in me, or the need to know, would be that everything's going to be okay no matter what goes on in your life. I've experienced it pretty much all, right? You and I have done this thing for a long time together, and we've been through, employment, unemployment, no money, have some money, death, life, birth, weddings, funerals, the whole nine, right? Everything through life, you get through, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, right? But sometimes it's ugly and sometimes it's beautiful, and that's just life, right?
That's it. I love that Dr. Seuss quote, the one that says, in the end, everything will be okay. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Not the end. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. What do you do for fun? What do we do for fun these days?
Do for fun?
We're so old and boring now.
I know, right?
Concerts. I know you go to a lot of concerts.
Oh, I love music. Yeah, a lot of concerts. I love going with my boys. We're actually going again in January to go see Tool. So
you got some Tool posters. For those of you who are watching this listening to this on the podcast, Bob's got who is that? So that's Korn. Is that a signed poster from the Korn? And then you got a
Korn show,
and then you got a Tool poster. And then is that
actually Alex Gray?
Sorry,
he's the artist. That's okay.
But the guitarist, that's Alex Lifeson.
Oh, that's right. Wow, you just scored points in my book.
Whew. Wow, that was like a test. I'd be embarrassed if I didn't know that one from Rush.
Alex. Yep, I'm in my man cave here.
So you're upstairs in your man cave. That's how we're doing this. Good times. What else do we do for fun? We're so boring. Go out to eat. Does that count?
I love cooking.
Shopping. Oh yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Thank God you like to cook. Otherwise,
I love to cook. I love music. Other things for fun. I love the Niners. They're my team, so I love doing
gardening. You do our yard in the.
I do.
Is immaculate.
I enjoy that. It brings me peace. There's something about it's spiritual. It's a spiritual thing. Like, it's really nice when your yard looks good, but get your hands dirty, or when you know this, planted all the flowers and stuff like that. There's just something about sinking your hands into the earth.
Yeah, no, right? I'm obsessed with the flowers. I love the way the yard looks in the summer and the spring. Cool. Well, that's the lightning rounds, which I think I keep saying we're going to call it the turtle round because it's so slow. But I think it's like a good jumping off place. But it'd be cool to hear is kind of like how old were you the first time was it a drink? Wow. Was that your first using experience? Was it a drink?
Yeah.
Tell me about your first drink.
My first drink was actually in 7th grade. I'll never forget that. But you know what? Actually, I was thinking about this. The very first any kind of substance that changed the way I felt was chewing tobacco. And I was in 6th grade.
Oh, interesting.
And I remember a buddy of mine. It was so crazy. I liked it so much. There was this magazine. I forgot what magazine, but you could send away a postcard to get a free can of chewing tobacco. And I did it. Like the first time, you know, when you get lightheaded, when you know, first time, you know, I took something, changed the way I felt. I loved it. I loved it immediately. Right.
Yeah.
And then I found that magazine, they'd send you a free can of whatever it was.
Wow.
And my mom intercepted it in the mail. And I got
Oh, she got it.
But they sent it to me. Yeah. So that was 6th grade. And
but how did you know to get that? Had you already tried it?
No, my buddy had brothers. And
so you
he
tried
brought
it
it over. I never forgot. It was a brand called Hawken, and it was Wintergreen, and I fell in love.
Did it make you sick the first time?
No, it made me feel good. No, yeah, it was. No, I just, you know, the whole lightheadedness, and you know, I loved it. I loved to change the way I felt. You know, I used to do crazy things when I was little, before even any kind of drug or drinking. You know, there was that chewing tobacco. That ain't no big deal. But I would do things like light fires and break
pyromania.
And you know what I mean. And
just get like a thrill and excitement.
Yeah, a rush. You know, I got in trouble for vandalism, and I was just always into things. Right. I was changing the way I felt. You know, as I mentioned earlier, my dad left when I was 5. My mom had 3 of us. She was trying to keep a roof over our head and food on the table. And there wasn't a lot of time for parental, you know, she wasn't around. Right. So there's no guidance. There's no, you know, boundaries. I was on my own. So, you know, my sisters were older. I was the youngest out of the 3 of us. And, you know, a lot of my childhood, it's hard to remember. I don't remember much. Right. But I do remember getting in trouble, and I do remember, you know, doing the things that changed the way I felt, right? And that's kind of where it started. And my drink, the first drink, was in the 7th grade, and I got really, really sick, right? So at that time, I guess it's good. A little footnote is that my father got sober. He passed away. He was 70 years old, and he passed away with 40 years of sobriety. So Alcoholics Anonymous was in my life. And I remember seeing the Serenity prayers on the walls because my mom was in Al-Anon, right? And they were doing their thing, and I just thought they were different, right? Or I thought they were odd. One of my, you know, my best buddy, Kevin W., I would go over to his house, and his parents were same thing, right? I grew up with this guy, and they would have these meetings in groups, and we'd be like, what are our parents doing? Is it like a ritual thing?
A seance?
Like, you know, a seance or some kind of trippy, you know? So then we just knew they were different. My dad had, you know, 2 birthdays when I seen him. He's, oh, it's my sobriety birthday. I'm like, what? And then, you know, I didn't get it, right? It's just weird. I'm like, my dad has 2 birthdays. Cool. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous was in my life at that time, even though I didn't know it. You know, I was affected. You know, I saw Serenity prayers on the walls, and I know that's not a specific AA thing, but it's common prayer that we have in our meetings. But yeah, so I knew my family was just a little bit different, right? My dad was gone. I knew he had 2 birthdays. I never felt like I belonged. You know, I have a really good friend, Dan H, that's in Los Gatos, and he summed it up perfectly for me, and I never forgot it because it was me to the bone. And he said that, you know, I felt when he was out there and doing his thing, he felt lonely, different, and afraid, and that summed it up for me. You know what I mean? And I didn't know that until I started drinking, you know, because all of that went away. So, you know, my first time with drinking was not, it wasn't anything glamorous. It was the day after New Year, so January 2nd, right? Or actually the 1st, right? That morning, I was at my buddy's house, and his brothers were partying the night before, and we were doing something, you know, throwing the football in the street or something like that. We did not party or drink. But the next day they had all this leftover beer, and I'll never forget, it was warm Coors, and we drank a bunch of warm beer, and I once again had chewing tobacco, and this time I really did get sick because the chewing tobacco was completely dry. They left like the lid off, so it dried. It's
Ew.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually, my buddies were laughing so hard because I was so sick. They took a picture, and I'm sure it's long gone, but wouldn't that have been amazing to have that picture, right?
I know. We're like,
To
oh,
look
missed
back on.
out.
Yeah.
How are you grateful that you got sober before social media and
Oh my God.
smartphones? Like, because
Yeah.
now
I
everybody has a
don't,
camera at the end of their
yeah.
hand.
Yeah, it would have been bad. It would have been it would have been bad fast for me, right? So, but
Yeah.
I'm grateful, and I think about those folks that got sober through the pandemic, right? And never set
Oh, I
their
know.
foot into the rooms, or, however they did it, however they found it and they did it. That's huge. I
It's
don't know if I could
amazing.
I don't know if I could have. I don't know.
I don't know. I think when you're
So
desperate enough, you're willing to do anything, even go to Zoom
yeah, that's
meetings.
true. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so growing up, you just felt lonely, different, and afraid. And what I know about you is that you grew up with benign neglect, meaning
Yeah.
your dad didn't live in the home. He was in Colorado, and you were in
Yeah.
California, and your mother was working all the damn time. So you were either with
Yeah.
babysitters, and as soon
Had
as
to.
you could be at home alone. And listen, back when you were a kid, um, what was acceptable what was an acceptable age for a child to be at home alone is very different than what
Oh
is
yeah.
acceptable nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you were basically, and that's what I mean by benign neglect. It wasn't like intentional, like your mom was working and there was nobody to watch
Right.
you, and your sisters were doing
Right.
their own thing. So you were alone a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah,
Um,
that really summed it up. Really, you
yeah.
summed it up good there. Paint that
Do
picture.
you want me
So
to
yeah,
tell
I
your
was
story?
alone.
Just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I can never tell your story
But
because you went through that whole period, like your using was short but intense.
so yeah, after that seventh grade, after that incident of the New Year's, all the dry beer and all that, I swore to God that I thought it was disgusting. How could anybody do that? Right. Now you fast forward into high school, and it's a whole different ballgame, right? So it was the 80s. It was probably around 85, probably early 86 is when I really started drinking. So my career was very short-lived, probably 86 through 88, because I got sober November 24th, 1988, right? So I went hard and fast. When that next time, when I was in high school and I was feeling lonely, different, and afraid, I used a lot of things before that. We touched on a little about changing the way I feel, but I loved sports, and I loved soccer specifically, and I got pretty good at it, right? And I would obsess. I would eat, breathe, sleep soccer. I was all about that. Multiple teams, spring, summer, fall. It was crazy, and I would referee games the whole night. I had to have it. So by the time I started drinking, I tried things that changed and made me change the way I feel, right? And girls obviously came into the picture, and I loved the way it felt when I had a girlfriend, and sports were awesome. I loved being, I got along with everybody. So, it wasn't like I was an outcast.
You had a
I
lot of
had a lot of
friends.
friends. I did, and that's my story there. I know a lot of people, they were alone or loners. That was not mine, right? I was the party guy. And once drinking kicked in, it took everything from me so quick. I should say drinking and cocaine. That really sped things
There
up
it
for me.
is.
It's in the 80s. So yeah. So, but at first it
Peruvian
was just,
marching
yeah,
powder.
yeah. Or one of the old timers used to call me a powder monkey.
Powder
Right?
monkey. Yeah.
Yeah. Good old Jack H. But yeah, so drinking, I would show up to games drunk, and I was no longer good. And my coach would set me on the bench and say, "Hey, we're going to have this sophomore replace you,"
Oof.
And at that time, I didn't care because I was drunk, and I just go party more, right? And then I had a learning disability, so school was never my thing. I just liked the social aspect of it. So I would do everything I could to skate by and get the right amount of grades to play sports. But after sports was over, my grades would tank, right? And I'd copy or cheat or have a girl do my homework or whatever I had to do, that typical kind of story. So, but then it got to the point it was so bad when the cocaine showed up in my life. That was my drug of choice. That was my love, right? And it took everything from me, everything. My family didn't want much to do with me by the time I was, a senior in high school. So I was 17, almost 18 years old. Didn't graduate high school. I stopped playing sports. The partying and the big parties stopped, right? And it ended up being kind of alone or maybe with a buddy or two. And then it was horrible. It would end up with me staring out a window, thinking they're out there or staring at the doorknob. I remember one time I was in my
kicking
room.
in.
Yeah. Oh my God. I remember one time I was in my room on a waterbed and I had a bunch of Coke and I was trying to cut it with a bank card, right? I had a debit card that had no money in the bank, but I had the card, right? And it was, I'll never forget, I'm it's dark. There's no light, right? Pitch black. And I'm trying to cut this cocaine on a cassette tape. And I remember my mom was in the next room and you do one little tap, tap, trying to cut it up. If you can paint that picture, it's pitch black on a waterbed. And the waterbed would move and I would hear the water and I knew she was running. It took me about 4 or 5 hours to cut this cocaine because I'm staring at the doorknob and then click, 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 try and cut it up. And I ended up like quitting, not quitting, but like just totally belling out from this. And I put it on the side of the floor for the morning because I couldn't do it because she was going to come in. But yeah, I was just paranoid all the time and, staring at doorknobs, curtains, the whole nine, right?
Yeah, it's a terrible place to be. What's weird, what's horrible about it's the anxiety, like the drug-induced anxiety. And man, I've done those, I've had many of those nights myself. And it was just like the distress that comes about from using too much. It's gross.
Horrible. I've been, times where I go into convulsions on the sidewalk outside a party.
Oh my God. You had like a seizure?
So much. Yeah. That was the one night, that was actually the beginning of the end. I remember that night very clearly. I was at a house party and I was pretty much I was seizing out I could not stop shaking. God. It was scary. And I ended up, the party was about 2-3 blocks away from my house and I was living with my mom. And I remember the sun was coming up and my goal was always to get into the house before the sun came up. I was kind of like a vampire, you know what I mean? If I made it in before the sun came up, that means I didn't have a problem. Right. And I could not control my shaking everywhere. It's a miracle I didn't end up in the hospital then on that day. But I remember trying to place the key into the keyhole and I could not get the key into the keyhole. It's like 5 a.m., right? My mom's at home and she opened up the door and she looked at me and I'll never forget that look. That was the beginning of the end for me. And, I said something and then she tried to talk to me and I'm not even going to repeat it online. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever said to a woman in my life, to my own mother. And I walked right into my back bedroom. I basically told her off with the worst way you can do that. And I remember her coming into my room and said, "You're just like your father and you will no longer live here unless you get some help immediately." So her black belt of Al-Anon kicked back in and she was done and she wasn't going to put up with me. So that's when my life changed, right? And that's when I had to go to a therapist where, it was actually a counselor, and talk to them. And, there's one, when this is just my story, I was really, really good at lying and I was really, really good at telling people what they wanted to hear to get them off my back, right? I think any good alcoholic addict person is, we got that double life, that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and I needed to preserve that Mr. Is it Dr. Jekyll? No, I'd be Mr. Hyde, right? The one that goes left away. Yeah. I had to protect that guy that was using drugs. So I would, I told the counselors everything they want to hear. I did. I said, no, I never did cocaine. I smoked weed a handful of times. It's not my thing. But yeah, I did drink, and I drank wine coolers. I even brought it to that level. You know what I mean? My thing was hard liquor. I loved vodka. I loved 151 Bacardi. That was my get up. That and cocaine is what I drank. I did not drink for taste. I drank for effect. And I drank as much as I could, as fast as I could, as much as, it just, until it was gone. Right. But they didn't know that. So, I ended up, passing the test, so to speak. And I told my mom. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but when did the moment of clarity fit in? Was that later?
So that was, yes, it was that. So that was the beginning of the end, right? So I met these counselors, and I got, a man took me to, his name is Jack Holt. He's since passed, and he happened to be my dad's sponsor, and he had many, he was a pillar in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Amazing.
Yeah. So and there's, for those that are interested, there's some AA speaker tapes online. I forget the URL, honey. We might be able to find it, put it in the link or whatever.
Show notes, yeah.
But he's on there, and he is an amazing speaker, just one of those great guys. But anyways, he took me to my first AA meeting because I had to do it, or I would have been kicked out of the house, right?
Yeah.
So I'm an 18-year-old kid at this point, and I went in there, and I looked at all these people. I'm like, oh my God, these people are freaks. There's no way I'm going to, at this time I'm shut down. I'm like, this is when I was partying alone. I was, it was not good. I was empty inside. I was broken. And, I saw these people laugh and smile and hug. And that freaked me out. There was no hugging. There was no smiling. There was no pats on the back. There was alone. That's all I knew, to be alone, right? And to party. That's all I knew. So it was odd and it was different. And I thought they wanted something from me. And, I'm an 18-year-old guy, and, there's these older people. And I'm like, what do you want? Don't touch me, but I cannot lie. They were happy. And that, something about the truth shines through, even through the darkest hours, and where you think you're not receiving it. The power of love, the power of truth, it penetrates all of that. And the little nook little crumb was planted within me, right? And now I went in and out, and I have it in my big book. I had like 3 or 4 different sobriety dates because I thought showing up to a meeting was good enough, right? There was no steps involved. There was no sponsor, nothing like that. But I had enough of the message that was sunk into my soul that I didn't know was there for when I did have that moment of clarity. Now, this is really interesting because, and we can talk about this a little bit more, because my mind has totally opened up to the prospects of, I'm not a religious guy. I'm going to go off on a little tangent, but I'll come back here. I wasn't raised with religion. I believed there was a God, and that he didn't like me because my life was so horrible. And I had so many, at that time, I thought tragic things, right? Like I remember, honey, I love you to death, but there's this gal that I was madly in love with.
What are you talking about? I was your friend.
Exactly, right? I was an 18-year-old kid. You got to cut me some slack here.
Yeah.
But
I don't have a past, but it's okay if you do.
Yeah, for sure. I heard your story. I was going to say a little something, but
I know.
Time,
yes,
so
I'll say it for you.
What was that bag in the blue jeans?
If it was in a bottle of Bagger blue jeans, I was doing it.
You were doing it. Or I'm just kidding.
So funny.
I love you.
I know. Hilarious.
But for real.
Yes.
This was somebody very important to me at the time, and I could not treat her. I couldn't treat her well. I couldn't treat her good. I couldn't. She was a sweetheart. And I would pray at night, please God, change me, because I don't want to hurt this person. And I hurt her. The next day I would hurt her with my words, not physical, but emotional. I was an asshole. I was a taker is what I was, right? So anyways, if there was God, he wasn't there. I prayed to him. It didn't work. Please keep me from not drinking and using today. That didn't work. I ended up snorting, whatever. an 8-ball that night, smoking an eighth of weed, you know, drinking. It just got worse and worse and worse. And I had no clue about the allergy nor the mental obsession at this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
No clue. I'm not armed. I'm just, I'm an 18-year-old alcoholic kid. At this time, I wasn't even living at home when I had this experience. I went to the party house where all we did was drink and use. So what ultimately ended up, I'll speed this up a little bit for time's sake, but on November 23rd, is the day before Thanksgiving. November 24th that year landed on a Thursday, which was Thanksgiving. And I was on everything that you could think of. Well, not everything, but you know,
Some
I know
psychedelics.
I did. So here's where I'm kind of leaning now with what I'm hearing and reading about and my views on my spirituality. It's ever evolving. Like at first I thought I had to believe in a God. I had to do this, and God is or he isn't. What's your choice? That was literally what they would tell me. You know, as a matter of fact, it's in the book, if I'm not mistaken, right? God is or isn't. What's your choice to be? Well, he is, but God can be many things, right? Jerry Williams, God bless his soul, told me that there's many paths to this destination, this God, right? And right now my path is Buddhism. Like, I am just not a religious guy. It does not sing to me. It doesn't work for me. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that Bob Allen is more in tune with the teachings of the Buddha, right? And being in the moment. And I really believe that night when I ate a shit ton of mushrooms, right? I mean,
you had a spiritual experience.
People just came, right. So I don't know. There's a lot of studies going on right now. And for the longest time, I actually still believe it was a very spiritual experience because I was loaded out of my mind. I mean, I could not, it was just a horrible night. And I remember November 23rd, looking out a 2-story window, and there was a house party going on because I lived at that place 24/7. There was always a party. And I remember looking out that 2nd-story window, and I had a moment of clarity, a spiritual experience. You can, whoever's listening, you can decide whatever you want to decide or think whatever you want to think. Is it God? Maybe. Is it the mushrooms? Maybe. I don't know. I'm open to that now. But I tell you what, that moment, I was as sober as I am right now to this day, 33 years later. And I knew, and I call it the holy instant. I knew I did the first 3 steps of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that I was powerless and my life was unmanageable. I knew that I could not do it alone and I was insane and I needed help. And that was the holy instant. And I swear it was so clear, crystal clear. And then all of a sudden, that what I think happened, that seed, those crumbs of AA, that little seed that was planted, it got the sunlight it needed. And I had a shift in my life as an 18-year-old little, young man who was absolutely fucked up in every aspect, bankrupt, right? In his life, I had no family wanting me to be around. I did not graduate high school. I could not hold a job. I had no girlfriend at that time. I'm 6'1". And I was about 150 some odd pounds. I was dying, right? I was sucked up. And I had that moment and my life changed. And it was so powerful that it affects me to this day. And I'm 51 years old, right? So at that point in time, I knew I needed help. And then the next day was Thanksgiving, and it happened to be in a very beautiful family's house. Jerry Williams was, he's passed. God bless him. I love him. His entire family, my best friend, Kevin, was there. And I spent my first day shaking like a leaf, but terrified. I knew I wasn't going to use again. I knew it to my bones. To this day, it's still in my bones. I wish I could, I know we're not supposed to say, but so far so good. I have not used, right? There's things I need to do to maintain my sobriety for me, but deep down inside, I'm done. So yeah, that changed it. And then I ended up in, I ended up in a hospital. Actually, it was really bad. And I did a 30-day stint. And the doctor looked at me and said, "Kid, you're not going to make it till your 21st birthday." I had an enlarged liver. All the cocaine I was doing did a terrible job on my sinuses, and my heart it had a weird rhythm going. Something trippy there. I should probably look back on the records I have there, but it was bad. I was sucked up, and it was It was an ugly time, but a beautiful time at the same time. Best worst day of my life.
Best worst
Right?
day. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's amazing.
again, if you want to get back to my favorite quote, everything that happens to me is the best possible thing that can happen to me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No,
and
that's
that's when my
beautiful.
recovery kicked in. Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. And Jack Holt took you to your first meeting after that?
He did. He
Yeah.
did. No, that was before.
Oh, that was
actually
before.
before.
Okay.
Yeah. So
What happened right
he
after you got
introduced.
out of rehab?
So out of rehab, I actually met Dan,
Okay.
my sponsor,
Mhm.
after I got out of rehab, and that man changed my life, as I alluded to earlier. You know, that man, Alcoholics Anonymous, like oozed out of him. You know, Dan.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like he's
yeah,
a completely different guy now, and he's just, you know, very humble, but he's,
charismatic.
you know,
Yeah.
yes, that man had a delivery like no other, and
Yeah.
in my opinion, still does, because he
Great
just, when we
storyteller.
talk, it's a heartstring. I mean, we just connect.
Yeah.
I could not talk to him for a couple months, and you know, we get right back at it, and you know, I get honest with him. So he taught me how to do this thing, and then I jumped in. I did 90 meetings in 90 days. And at that time, I was going to Cocaine Anonymous. And then Dan and I went to a Wednesday night meeting. It's no longer there. It was a Wednesday night Coco's group. It's a men's meeting. And I
You
met
went to
all of
that
my
for
friends.
years.
Years, yeah.
Years you
That
went
was
to that
like
meeting.
that. Yes, absolutely. And those are the men that taught me how to speak to you. Those were the men that said, you know what, Bob, if you want a job, you got to show up early and stay late. You got to ask, how can I help you? You know what I mean? He said, if you're having a problem with the dishes at home, or if it's not clean, go clean them. You know what I mean? He said, you know, these guys would give me simple solutions, right? And they taught me how to. I literally grew up in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and the men that trudged the road before me, right?
Right.
So that's my story. I mean, we can go off onto any angle you want to go off on, but you know, I am eternally grateful for all those men that did it before me and reached back out and said, nope, we're going this way, buddy. What you're doing is wrong. You know, guys that told me they would risk their friendship to tell me the truth. And a true friend will do that. Yeah. And your true friends will listen. That's my experience, right? Yeah. Men that I have in my life, we're honest. And the men that I'm not honest with, they're not in my life. Right. So, yeah. No, it's been such an honor to walk this journey with you. And I'm not just saying that because you're my husband and my favorite person, even after all this time. 27 years we've been walking this road together. It's been a long time. That's incredible. Right. Think about it. Yeah. No, we're super lucky. What would you credit? What would you credit that to? What, our longevity? Yeah. Like what? Yeah. Well, what do you know what I say? I have an answer for that. Yeah, I tell everybody that you and I have the same goal, which is my happiness. Well, yes, that's very self-centered, but yes. Yes. No, when you were telling your story, you were talking about how you used to be a taker. And I've heard you say many times that the miracle happens when the taker becomes a giver. Yes. And that's when you know you got it. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, we don't like got it. Like, I know that you don't ever take your sobriety for granted. No. Like whenever, I've never heard you being like, oh, I got this, but sure do have a fighting chance if you have the, what am I trying to say? Like the proof or the evidence or the behavior of being a giver. And that's definitely you. I've watched you over the years and you're definitely a giver. Yeah. I mean, you know, sobriety is so complex. I mean, it's simple. It is. But it's very complex. Like for me, like everybody's different. What works for me might not work for half your listeners or 3/4 of them. And that's okay. And that's okay. Right? Yeah, that's the thing I've gotten out of doing the podcast for 5 years is that you and I grew up in a very insulated community with very strict boundaries. And it worked for us. And we were lucky that we came up in an area that had really strong recovery and lots of variety, lots of opportunity, like tons of meetings. Yeah.
tons of like specialized meetings.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not everybody in the country has that. Not everybody in the world has
No.
that. So we were super lucky. And what I've learned is that there are many paths to recovery, even not just
Yes.
to God, like Jerry used to teach you, but like
Yeah.
to recovery. And,
Yeah.
you talked a little bit about your psychedelic experience. There's all these, it's been mind blowing to see all the, like Johns Hopkins is running this study on PTSD and psilocybin and
Yeah.
MDMA and just all these
Yeah.
different, there's all these different approaches now that are, and it's what's interesting about those experiments or the things that you see like on Netflix about like the ayahuasca
Oh
um,
yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
is that they call it plant medicine. I practice abstinence. I interviewed this guy, or maybe he interviewed me. Oh God, Paul Churchill from the Recovery Elevator talks about doing plant medicine and ayahuasca and what a mind expanding. It's like an ego dissolving
Yeah.
experience so that you can see yourself clearly and you have these insights on such a deep level and connection to the spiritual universe that it profoundly changes some people. Like I have on occasion talked to people who are so hardcore addicted and they've tried all the things. I'm like, go do one
Yeah.
of those things. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you've tried
Yeah.
everything else, go try
Yeah.
this, like save your damn life. Like
Yeah.
the whole harm reduction, that's a valid path to recovery. I don't want to see people stuck in like using weed for the rest of their
Right.
lives. How do you feel about that? Has your
So
views on that
you
changed?
know, so I have, yeah, I think so, and I had experience. So there's some foundations for me that are rock solid. That it's just the way that I'm built and the way that I was raised in recovery is absolute abstinence. Like that is it. The step before the step. I admitted I am an alcohol. I mean, to my innermost self, I cannot use anything. To this day, I can't. So for me, it's abstinence. I can't get away with chipping here and there. I don't even do the near beer stuff, right?
Oh
I
no.
had one old timer say, you don't see ex heroin addicts shooting up 0.001% heroin, do you? And I'm like, yeah, no, it just clicked for me. Some others,
Mhm.
it's no big deal. And right on, to each their own, right?
Right.
I got to live my life. You live yours. And also, whatever. I actually sponsored a guy that was, extremely depressed beyond what 12 steps can do. And he came to me and said, I'm going to go to this ceremony, this ayahuasca ceremony. And I said, you do, like, it was not good. Like he needed help, right?
Was he
Beyond
suicidal?
me. I believe so. It was
Okay.
very, very
It
depressive. He
was
didn't say I'm going to
serious.
kill myself,
Like
right? But he
treatment
was,
resistant depression.
yeah, exactly. And he thought about it and he goes, I need to take this path. And I support that. I go, yeah, absolutely. You have to exhaust everything. Like I just, I stopped judging people on what they're going to do. This was, I probably had 15 some odd years, maybe 17, excuse me, my chair, 17 years of, recovery behind me. And at this point, my hardcore, no, don't drink, you go to meetings and that's it. That's
Right.
changed for me. Right. I see. I try, if I really truly live up to the honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, right? I have to be open.
Right. Yeah.
So he did that and he went on the sermon. Now for me, I said, listen, Bright, for me, if you take something, that's taking something. So I'm hardcore on, you'll have to recount your days, right? If you want to do the program or
Right.
if you want to work with me, that's how I view it. But, he ended up doing it and it totally changed his life. I don't think he's back in the program, but he wrote a book. He was very happy. He
Right.
changed industries. The guy was a success. So, okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
The way that I was raised didn't work for him. It raised in Alcoholics Anonymous didn't work for him.
Right.
But this other path did, and he's a
Yeah.
spiritual man from all I know now. We lost touch. I don't know what he's doing now, but when he was happy and his life got successful, and he was no longer, suffering from what I could tell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
there's
the
some other
goal is
people.
to
Yeah.
end suffering.
And I know some other people that have severe depression and they need it. And God bless that. You know what I mean? If it's going to save their life or them to kill themselves, oh my God,
listen,
do it.
Yeah.
Exhaust everything.
Yeah. It was interesting for me. It's like, I was very intrigued by it because I have had like lifelong things that I just have not been able to resolve. And I was like, I wonder if this would help. And I wanted to try it and all this. But at the end of the day, like, my life is working. You and I have a great relationship. We're in the house of our dreams. Our like life is not perfect, we have our fair share of suffering, my mom dying and Tyler going to my son going to I just said it. Damn it. I'll have to have my editor cut out his name. But anyway, my son went to our son went to rehab, and like, so we've had our fair share of, challenges. But at the end, the majority of my time, I'm in peace the majority of my time. So I don't really need to do it. Like, I'm not in crisis. And so it just be for the evolution of my spiritual growth is why I wanted to do it. But I don't really have a reason to do it. It's not lost on me that your moment of clarity came after a psilocybin experience, and you've been sober for 33 years. That's a really profound change.
Yeah, so that exactly. And at first I really thought it was, and it could be,
it is a spiritual experience. Like, it doesn't matter if it was the mushrooms or not. Like, you had a profound experience.
There was God, I wish I could describe it. I just can't. Those that have had that experience know what I'm talking. There's no way words do not come close to describing what happened to me. I mean, think about that. An 18-year-old kid that's just a taker, just mean and just not giving a shit about life, just wasting it away, and have a shift take place. That shift is still in me. That feeling, I could go back to that day right now and I feel it. That's mine. That's, holy smokes, that's incredible, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's incredible.
That is it. It's important for you to have that amazing experience. And over the years, I would also just want to interject there that you have done a ton of service. A ton of service.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. That's just part of it. That's how I was raised, like sponsoring guys. Now lately, since our move,
you took a little break.
Talked about a little bit. Yeah. I'm kind of going with my recovery, my flow. And for the longest time, 30 years, right? In the trenches all the time, working hard, just kind of needed a break. And when we moved, that was an easy way for me to kind of just, now some people can say it's coasting, and I'm going to agree a little bit. I have been. And what I've realized, especially with the passing of Aida, your mom, is that the love that I felt, and what's very close is when I work with others, right? And the service and giving back, because I can slide into becoming a taker, right? I like to say I'm cured. There is no cure, you know what I mean? And I know that. And I know it takes certain activities for me, for Bob Allen, to maintain my sobriety. And that is, service is a huge one, right? I've got a gift. What am I doing not sharing that gift? If I can, I had police officers, I've had teachers, I've had counselors, I've had friends, girlfriends, you count it. Tell me what to do. This is how you're messed up. You need to, none of them could help me. None of them. It wasn't until another man said, Bob, this was my story, and this is, maybe you can relate, maybe not. This is how I got through this. I could hear, I could listen, right? So if I have this gift, which I choose to call a gift of sobriety for 33 years, there's a guy suffering that's been yelled at or said, this is what you need to do. You need to follow us, and if I can reach out and say, hey, this is my experience. This is my experience, strength, and hope. and I can give them something, that right there, the feeling of, and there's nothing like seeing the lights come on in an individual's life, right? To see their lives unfold and grow and blossom. Like, I can think of a handful of guys I work with that they were takers.
Yeah.
And now they're full productive members of society. They have their own families. They're successful in business. And, and I'm not just saying that, oh, it's AA only that did that. No. There's principles, there's spiritual principles that we live by that create that type of lifestyle. The more that we put in and the more that we give, the more we get, right? So passing of your mother woke me up a little bit to like, okay, Bob, it's time to get off the bench and get back into the game of what makes me happy, right? And what makes me happy, it's not stuff. It's seeing the lights come on. And to have a host of friends like I've never had before, like, I can go anywhere and there we are, I have a certain issue, okay, well, find that guy that's walked through that before me. That's the beautiful thing, right? So service, that's top. I think, number one, if somebody's wanting to change their lives and to get, quit drinking or quit using drugs, you got to put that plug in the jug, and you got to put the bag down, right? And some require rehab, some maybe require a meeting, some whatever it is for you to do that. And then the next is to get in, find out what's going on with you, and get rid of the ghosts that are in your past and clean up some of the wreckage, and then give it away is the ultimate, 12-step, right?
Absolutely.
Helping another person.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that's maybe
that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Of course you do.
I tend to go on a different tangents.
I know.
And get lost, so.
I know we could go on, and I know we could talk about this forever. This is probably a good place to stop for now. We could always do another round 2 when I